The saga continues. Hi and welcome. My name is Dr. Lindsay Marie. I'm a board-certified family medicine physician, and on this channel I like to discuss some of the most common health conditions with a focus on wellness and nutrition. If that's something you're interested in, be sure to subscribe. In today's video, I'm going to recap what a Chalazion is, briefly discuss the treatment options along with an alternative treatment option called IPL, and go over 10 different causes of a Chalazion plus one extra one that you may not have thought of. This last cause turned out to be the one that I believe caused my Chalazion, and I'm gonna discuss all about it. You may have clicked on this video because you have previously watched my other Chalazion video, which is right here. If you haven't seen that video yet, I encourage you to watch it. It goes over the basics about what a Chalazion is, some of the treatment options, and my journey as far as what I did to help heal my Chalazion. I will link it here and also in the description box below. And now I just wanted to say thank you for watching that video, also for sharing your comments and your stories. It really means a lot. These are your comments of you guys sharing your own struggles with healing a Chalazion. I try to read and respond to each and every comment, but I know there are some that I missed because at certain times I was away from YouTube. So if I didn't get a chance to respond to your comment, just be aware that I am appreciative of all comments on the channel. And I'm glad you guys can also respond to each other's comments for moral support. If you have suffered from a Chalazion, you know how difficult it can be at times when it's not going away. And just in case this is your first time hearing about a Chalazion, I will go over what it is right now. A Chalazion is a small, usually painless lump or swelling that appears on the eyelid. It's caused by a blocked oil gland. It is different from a stye, which is usually an infection of the gland and tends to be more painful. Also, a stye is more on the surface of the eyelid, whereas a Chalazion can be a little bit deeper within the eyelid. A stye goes away pretty quickly with conservative treatment, usually including warm compresses. It usually goes away within about a week or so, whereas a Chalazion can sometimes last a lot longer. In my case, my Chalazion lasted at least 8 full months before it was fully resolved. There are many other people who suffer from Chalazions. Sometimes they can get multiple bumps on either eyelid or both eyelids at the same time. Quick recap of the treatment options. Number 1 is warm compresses. Eye doctors typically recommend using a warm compress on a Chalazion for 5 to 10 minutes up to 5 times per day. Other treatment options may include antibiotic eye ointment or oral antibiotics, although that is controversial because, as we know, Chalazions are not due to infection. In the last video, I mentioned special eye vitamins, which could also help, as well as some home remedies, including apple cider vinegar. A lot of you in the comments did have some luck with these other remedies, but for those of you that didn't, unfortunately, the next step of treatment options would include surgical management. There are 2 types of surgical management, and I discussed both of those types in the last video. Unfortunately, YouTube partially demonetized my video due to those surgical images, so I won't be repeating those on here, but the 2 surgical managements do include 1 steroid injection and 2 excision and drainage. If you remember from my story, or if you're new here, I decided to choose the steroid injection. For me, I felt that it would be less invasive and lead to less risk of scar tissue. It took about 2 full weeks for the procedure to heal, and I thought that the Chalazion would be completely gone, but I could tell there was still a slight remnant of it in my eyelid. There were also times where my Chalazion would flare back up from time to time, where it would become a little bit more red and swollen, and obviously you could tell it wasn't completely gone. So at that time, I had done further research and discovered an alternative treatment for a Chalazion, which includes IPL. So what is IPL and what does it stand for? IPL stands for Intense Pulse Light. It uses broad spectrum light pulses to target abnormal blood vessels, inflammation, and clogged oil glands within the eyelids. It's typically used in dermatology for conditions such as rosacea and hyperpigmentation, but it has also been shown in the treatment of a Chalazion to improve the health of your eyelids and unblock those oil glands. There are 4 ways that IPL works to treat a Chalazion, and I'm going to go over those now. So number 1, it melts the oil gland secretions. The heat from the intense pulsed light works directly on the blocked oil gland to melt those secretions and relieve that lump. Number 2, it reduces eyelid inflammation. And remember, the main cause of a Chalazion is inflammation, so it actually helps to calm the immune response leading to this inflammation. Number 3, it helps to destroy abnormal blood vessels in the area. In the event that you have an increased immune response to an area of inflammation, it can lead to abnormal blood vessels to keep feeding that area inflammatory markers to keep contributing to this inflammation. So if you can get rid of the source of these abnormal blood vessels, obviously you can see how it would also reduce inflammation. And number 4, IPL has been shown to improve gland function long term. It's typically given in a series of 3 to 6 sessions spread 2 to 4 weeks apart, and the results do accumulate over time. With repeated treatments, the oil glands tend to become more stable and less likely to get clogged in the future. Now, when do you know if it is time to try this form of an alternative treatment for your chalazion? So here are some key guidelines for that. If your chalazion continues to reoccur or becomes chronic. Now remember, chronic just means it's lasting for a longer period of time. Because it is recurring, it may be resistant to other forms of conservative treatment, which included the warm compresses and even the antibiotics. And your chalazion may have not healed even after doing a procedure, including the steroid injection or incision and drainage. And this was the case for me, so this is why I decided to look into this treatment. So many of you who had watched to the end of my last video were very curious about how my own IPL treatment went, and so I'm going to share with you that experience now. Let's transfer back into time now, where I can briefly catch you guys up on the timeline of my own chalazion, and some of the details of this timeline are going to be very important, which we will get into later. So my chalazion first developed on my right upper eyelid in October of 2022 after returning from a trip to Egypt. As the last video shares, I had tried multiple conservative treatments before failing all of those, and eventually decided to get the steroid injection, but it was not until 4 months later. And it couldn't come soon enough because Christmas Eve of 2022 was the worst my chalazion had ever gotten. It was really huge and red and ugly at that time, and I was feeling at my lowest. So October, November, December, I had waited it out, and finally in January of 2023 is when I got the steroid injection. I had discussed with you guys about 2 weeks after that procedure, it still wasn't fully gone or resolved, and it was also very disappointing for me because I thought it would be a cure-all to my chalazion. And that's what led me to looking into alternative therapies, including IPL, and I was able to set that up about 1 month later, which was in February of 2023. The doctor that I ended up choosing is an ophthalmologist. She also does cosmetic procedures and owns and runs a med spa here in town. So I felt pretty comfortable going to her. To protect your eyes and your vision from the intense pulse light, they will place metal eye covers over your eyeballs before the procedure. Now, I will say that this part was not pleasant because obviously it is uncomfortable for others touching your eyes, let alone with a metal covering. They do place a cooling gel over the treatment areas, and the cost depends largely on that. If you search online for the cost of IPL treatment, it can vary. I would say if you're getting just the eyelids done, it may be anywhere from $250 to $300, and they actually recommend at least 3 to 6 sessions of the IPL treatment to get the best benefits. So that would definitely be one of the downsides of this treatment, is the higher cost. But getting back to how it was for me, after the metal eye shields were placed, the IPL treatment was started, and the intense pulse light was a little bit more intense than I was expecting. It was a very sharp but quick pain that you felt each time the light passed over your skin. It's not completely unbearable, but it was definitely uncomfortable, and I was happy to have it over with. Because of the way that I wasn't expecting it to be so intense, I ended up deciding not to go back for more treatments. 1, because of the cost, 2, because I wanted to see how the first session worked, and 3, because it was just really painful and uncomfortable. So that was a quick recap of my procedure. Now let's fast forward to how the healing process went. I would say it continued to reduce the size of the remaining small remnant that was there, and at times, again, you wouldn't even know that I had anything wrong with my eyelid, but for some reason, every so often, my eyelid would swell back up ever so slightly, and you could tell there was just the smallest little lump there still. At that point, after exhausting all of the conservative treatments, the steroid injection, and now the IPL treatment, even though I only did 1 session, I figured this would be something I would have to live with. So now let's transition into discussing about those 10 causes of chalazions, and also the surprise root cause, which I believe I had as a cause for my chalazion. So cause number 1 is having a blocked meibomian gland. The meibomian glands are the oil glands all across the upper eyelid as well as the lower eyelids. When they become blocked with debris or hardened oil, that's the cause of the bump within the eyelid. And this is probably the most common cause and the easiest one to treat, because if you are doing those warm compresses regularly, it should be helping to resolve the blockage within the oil gland. But for those of us who have dealt with an ongoing chalazion, we know it may not be that simple. So the other causes could include chronic blepharitis, and blepharitis just means inflammation of the eyelid. Some people are just more prone to this condition where they can get inflammation at the surface of the eyelid. It is also usually temporary and tends to resolve on its own over time. Number 3 would be rosacea. A lot of people can get rosacea more on the midface or the nose, but there is another type of rosacea that occurs specifically on the eyelids called ocular rosacea. This is another skin condition with inflammatory origins. So again, any cause of inflammation around the eyelid could lead to this inflammatory lump, also known as the chalazion. Number 4 is something known as seborrheic dermatitis. This is another skin condition that typically causes more flaky skin in the area. So if your skin is more flaky and irritated, it can also lead to that blockage of the oil glands. Number 5 on the list is poor eyelid hygiene. So you just want to make sure that you are washing your face and gently cleansing your eyelids, especially before you go to sleep, so that you don't have any excess debris building up from dirt or makeup, which can definitely contribute to the clogging of the oil glands. The 6th cause of a chalazion can actually be a previous stye. As mentioned before, most styes go away on their own with conservative treatment, but occasionally they can turn into a chalazion. So in this case, the lump within your eyelid would start off as a stye at the surface of the eyelid as an infection, but over time the infection could lead to more inflammation and blocking of the oil gland. Number 7 could include other skin conditions. This is for people who are more prone to acne or have increased oil production. Number 8 is another important one, and it is touching or rubbing your eyes frequently. It may be pretty natural to just rub your eye when it feels irritated, but you have to remember your hands are not always clean. So for future, definitely try not to rub your eyes, especially rubbing them hard if they're irritated, because it can damage those delicate oil glands. Number 9 would be using old or contaminated eye makeup. Now I know in my last video I had mentioned my chalazion did start literally the day after I applied eye makeup. Probably it was old, which was the initial trigger, but then there was other things going on which led to it not healing well. This old makeup could contain bacteria and irritate the oil glands. Fortunately, men don't have to deal with this, but for us women, that is something to think about. The 10th cause of a chalazion on this list is hormonal changes. People can be more prone to acne breakouts during changes in hormones, especially during puberty or in times of pregnancy or even menopause. During times of stress, our body also produces a hormone called cortisol, which increases inflammation within the body. I did a whole nother video on cortisol and the effects it has on the body, as well as ways to help detox from cortisol. So if that's something you would like to check out, I will link it here and also in the description box below. But with that being said, anything that increases inflammation with the body, being those skin conditions, acne, cortisol, hormone changes, it can definitely contribute to that localized inflammation within the eyelid, making it a lot harder for that inflammation to go away unless the root cause is addressed. And that is what I wanted to leave until the end, which has to do with inflammation in the body. And that is the last and final cause that I believe I had causing my chalazion. It wasn't mentioned on this list of the top 10 causes of chalazion, but I'm going to get into that now, right after getting into a few more details about my story. So back to February of 2023, after my first IPL treatment, I felt that I didn't want to go for any other procedures because it was a very uncomfortable procedure for me. For the most part, the larger lump of my chalazion was gone, and only at times during stress, again, stress leads to inflammation, I did notice it getting slightly bigger at those times. So at that point, I was focused on reducing my stress and hopefully I wouldn't have to deal with it anymore, until something else occurred, and that's what finally made me get to the bottom of the root cause of my own chalazion. And so now I would like to take you guys back to another 2 months after my IPL treatment. At this time, it was the end of April, and I was heading out for another international trip to visit a friend in Colombia, South America. So I'm just gonna put up a picture side by side now of my chalazion when it was at its worst in December of 2022, and right before my trip to Colombia at the end of April 2023, which is another 4 months later and after 2 treatments, including steroid injection and IPL treatment. So here they are. As you can see, on the left was the picture from December 2022 when it was at its worst. It was so big and red and inflamed, obviously just not looking well. And on the right, this is actually a picture of me on the plane ride to Colombia. It's much smaller, no longer red, but you can still see a slight remnant of it there on the right upper eyelid. Here's another picture more from the front, and yet one more picture of me holding down my eyelids so you can see the actual bump that was still there. You can even see some of the little blood vessels that were leading toward the chalazion, like we talked about earlier. What was going to come next would be something that I never in a million years would have imagined for myself. As a doctor and entrepreneur, I always have multiple things on my plate that I am juggling, and this is something that I have a bad habit of, but I am always working right up until the very end before leaving on a trip, and this causes me to pack and get prepared for the trip at the very last minute, which in turn leads to me never getting any proper sleep before I leave. So I remember running on very low sleep prior to arriving to my friend's house in Colombia. As soon as I got there, my friend had prepared for me empanadas for dinner, and right after that, I was so exhausted, I took a nap for 2 full hours. When I awoke from that nap, I had the most intense and awful feeling of nausea that I had maybe ever felt before. And within just a few minutes of waking up, unfortunately, I had a very unpleasant GI upset, which I like to call both ends. I wouldn't know it at the time, but this was the start of finally getting to the root cause of my chalazion. There is a lot more juicy details to this story, so if you guys would like a whole nother story time video of what went on for me during that trip, I can definitely make a new video on it. Now, the friend that I was visiting in Colombia was the same friend that I traveled to Egypt and Turkey with 7 months prior in October 2022, and she knew at that time, unfortunately, I was also no stranger to both ends, as I had that on the other trip as well. Sometimes as doctors we get sick too, and it's always good to have a friend by your side who can help take care of you when you are feeling ill and down. And because I was having such bad GI upset since the time she left me in October of 2022 to now April of 2023, almost 7 months later, she was like, something is wrong with you, you've got to get tested. And thank God for my friend being an advocate for me, because on that trip she actually encouraged me to go get a stool study done. And what did this stool study show? It showed that I had an intestinal parasite. First reaction is, I can't believe I have a parasite. Second reaction is, I know I got it after eating the fish on the Nile River in Egypt, because after that is when all of my GI symptoms started. And then finally my thoughts were, after putting everything together, this intestinal parasite has to be the cause of my chalazion. Because parasites lead to an increased inflammation in the body and especially an increased immune response, you can get different changes and breakouts within your skin as a result. So after putting 2 and 2 together, I truly believe that my chalazion was due to the result of an intestinal parasite. Those parasites are sneaky and they can lay dormant for a time, but they can flare up with a vengeance at other times, so watch out. And that's what I had to experience, unfortunately, after first arriving to Colombia. But after the stool testing, I was provided with a 3-day course of an anti-parasite medication. And the good news is, after taking that medication, my GI symptoms were fully resolved. And finally, after 8 months later of going through the ups and downs of a slight remnant flaring up from time to time within my eyelid, it never came back. I don't know if you can fully tell on this video, but I am proud to say that my eye is fully healed. I have had a smooth and flat eyelid ever since. And I no longer had any more flare-ups from time to time, even when I was under stress. Whew. So that was a lot to go over and discuss today. For those of you still watching, thank you so much for sticking to the end of my story. I could do another story time or a more in-depth video of how I found out about the parasite and more of the treatment options for parasites and things like that. If that's something you're interested in, let me know in the comments. But the moral of the story, and something I really wanted to get across to you guys with today's video, is that if you are suffering from a recurrent or chronic chalazion that is not going away, it could be because you haven't identified and treated the root cause. In today's video, we went over 10 of the most common causes of a chalazion, but again, that list may be limited and doesn't include some of the outliers, which happen to be my cause, including an intestinal parasite. As you can see for me in my story with my chalazion, I went through all of the conservative management, I tried a surgical treatment, and I even tried the alternative treatment option, including IPL. In the end, there was still a slight remnant of my chalazion that was not going away fully, but after trial and error and with the cycles of life, or should I say the cycles of my parasite, I finally figured out what was the underlying cause of the inflammation causing my chalazion. So I hope that this gives you some hope today and some other insights of other underlying causes of your chalazion. Now, I know my case was different because I had previously traveled out of the country and may have been more at risk for an intestinal parasite. But if you were like me and you or your doctor has ruled out other causes of your reoccurring or chronic chalazion, an intestinal parasite could be something that you could consider as a cause for you as well. That's why it's important we share our stories sometimes, because you never know who you can help by sharing how you went through something and how you got better. So once again, thank you guys for watching. If you have other questions about the causes or treatment options for a chalazion, put them in the comment section below. I would be happy to answer those for you. Continue sharing your stories and encouraging one another through this difficult time of having a chalazion. And on that note, be healthy, stay happy, and never lose hope, because you never know what's around the corner. Don't forget to like and share the video, and until next time, bye!